Alright, a lot of people are having trouble with super safeties and this new super selector and even FRT triggers, not really understanding how things work. Well, especially if, like, super selector says you have to have a MILSPEC trigger, okay? MILSPEC is a very specific set of terms. It means that it will go into a military rifle. We all know what that means, 16-inch, 20-inch. That also means it's a full auto or a 3-round burst. So they have to have very specific cuts on these parts. Otherwise, they can't use them because they're going to be, you know what I mean, they're going to be going in a full auto weapon. They need to be full auto parts. Well, same thing. If you're trying to run essentially what would be considered full auto, just in the rate of fire, we're not going to argue semantics about trigger pulls or whatever. If you're trying to shoot fast, you need to have all the components that would support a fast firing rifle or pistol, depending on the circumstances. So, as you can see here, there's a difference between true MILSPEC and commercial MILSPEC. Now, a lot of this commercial MILSPEC is because of the assault rifle ban when Clinton was in office, at 94 to 04, I don't remember, 92 to 02. Anyway, it was 10 years. You had to sell assault rifles that had a very specific set of parts, and I'll go over those with pictures in just a moment, but you had to have these parts to be legal because they could not be readily converted to full automatic, if that makes any sense. So, like, triggers had parts added to them, hammers had parts removed from them, etc. Bolt carrier group was, shortened on the bottom end of the back, so it couldn't trip the full auto sear. Anyway, so you have MILSPEC. MILSPEC means it will go in a full auto military weapon. If it will not go in a full auto military weapon, it may be to mil specification measurements, but it's not a full MILSPEC trigger. Okay, keep that in mind. Alright, so in the case of the super selector, you have to have a MILSPEC trigger, meaning it needs to be open on the rear, just like on an M16, M4, etc. The AR-15s, all your Palmetto State Armories, blah blah blah, they're going to come with it closed in the rear because they're still following that old ban rule, just in case, just to cover their ass in case of a lawsuit, somebody converts one to a full auto and commits a crime, etc. Now, another thing they won't include is the M16 disconnector. You do not need this because you're not running an M16 automatic sear. That's part of the sear and the full auto. You're not going to need it. So the AR-15 disconnector will work. You're also not going to need the M16 selector or the AR-15 selector, but you can see here the difference between the two because of the auto sear and the engagement on the back of the disconnector and allowing the auto sear to engage into the back of the hammer, which you can see right here, and you won't find a hammer like that with that notch on the back because they don't sell them, obviously, because that would be considered a full auto fire control group, and that's intent to construct blah blah blah. I'm not a lawyer. Now, another thing they did was, you can see on the bottom, that's a M16 or full auto bolt carrier group. On the top is what they sold in the 90s, early 2000s as a semi-auto only bolt carrier, because even if you drilled a third hole and put an auto sear in your lower, the bolt carrier would not trip the auto sear and allow for full auto fire, which you can clearly see here. There was the one on the far right, or even the bottom left, you can see they cut a lot out of it, and they did that just again to cover their ass. They did this too with the hammer, not sure what that exactly is, but on the right is the full auto, left is the non. Another thing you need to consider is if you're running a 16-inch or even a 20-inch barrel, these gas systems are tuned already and designed for rapid fire, we'll call it. So you're not really going to have a problem. You can run a buffer spring and a buffer however you like. You can use the original gas block. You're not going to run into problems. However, if you look at the chart here, when you get below carbine length, carbine and pistol length, you're going to be over pressured. There's going to be so much pressure coming through that gas system that you're going to have bolt bounce on the way back, and you're going to have bolt bounce and usually non-lockup on the bolt closing around the back of the round, because it's bouncing against the end of the barrel as well. So as you can see here, if you have a shorter than 16-inch barrel, you're probably going to want to get an adjustable gas block. This will solve 99% of the problem of the gas system, because you can pretty much close it off and only allow the amount of gas into the system that you need to function and operate the rifle. We'll go over that in a second. But if you adjust your gas block as far down as you can go to where it's cycling properly, but when you go into rapid fire, it just doesn't want to either feed or eject properly, or you're getting hammer fall onto the round and it's light hitting the primer, you're getting a dimple but not firing, then you're going to want to dig deeper. I personally use and recommend the Odinworks adjustable with the click on the front. It's got like 10 positions. You use an Allen wrench through the front of the hand grip. You can adjust it on the fly for if you put a can on or not. It's pretty low profile for, I use a 1-inch handguard and it still fits. So obviously a bigger handguard would work, but you can still get an Allen wrench in there around large cans and large muzzle devices. So it's like 89 bucks. It's lasted me thousands upon thousands of rounds. I've got one on every, loud boy, fast boy I have. So check them out. I don't get paid by them, obviously, and that's where this would come in. You're going to want to start with a heavier buffer right off the bat. If your spring is old, get a newer spring. I recommend the flat spring or a braided spring. It's less ringy. It makes less noise in the tube. They also last a little longer in my experience. I've fired thousands upon thousands of rounds through all of my weapons. Now I'm running a 7.5-inch barrel, so I run an H3 buffer and a flat wound spring. It's almost silent. I never have problems with ejection or feed or anything like that. But then also you're going to want to look at your ejection to see what you need, whether you need a heavier spring or a heavier buffer, or less gas or more gas. And here's how you do that. Basically just keep an eye on your ejection. If it's shooting straight out to your right or just a little behind to the right, you're doing great. Anything else, this is how you adjust it. If it's shooting forward, you've got way too much gas in the system. If it's shooting to the rear, you don't have enough gas. You could also be under lubricated. Everything's kind of slowing down and binding up, so make sure you're always got lube in there. But I stand by the adjustable gas block. Obviously you need the proper trigger and parts and bolt carrier group, but once you have all those parts correct, an adjustable gas block is going to get you 99% of the way there. You probably are going to need an H2 or H3 buffer if you're running a pistol length gas system. Carbine length, it's going to be close. You at least need a H2. And then I would always upgrade a buffer spring when I have it out. If it's just a stock buffer spring, go ahead and throw a new one in. It's not going to kill you. They're like $8 to $18. And then I again recommend the flat spring or the braided spring. I've ran them probably twice as many rounds across them as I can a stock spring before I start noticing bounce and wobble, noise, etc. So this will get you running. Comment if you have any questions. I should be able to answer them. And have fun.